All right, so hello and welcome everyone to today's UND Study Abroad Alumni Story Share and Question and Answer session. My name is Emily Doherty and I'm a Study Abroad Advisor here at UND. Joining me today are two alumni of our Study Abroad program who are current students at UND. They studied abroad at different times and in different places, so I think you'll gain a lot from engaging with their stories. So the format of this session will have each student present a timed slideshow of their experience abroad, and then after both presentations are complete, we'll open with a question and answer session. So first up, we have Abby Oettinger. Abby is a senior at UND, majoring in international studies in German, and Abby was a participant of the fall 2019 semester at Sea Voyage. Take it away, Abby.
Yeah, so like Emily said, I did this last fall and my voyage was the Atlantic and Canals. And we started in the Netherlands. We went to Europe, Africa, South America, and then we finished in the United States. So your campus is the ship, and the ship varies depending on what they can get, but you take courses on the ship when you're at sea. And then in countries, you have field classes, which I will talk about in another slide. But if you don't have a field class, you can explore as you want. So the world is your classroom. So field classes, normally you take 12 credits and one's the main class. So you'll have 3 to 4 field classes, which is a hands-on learning experience that, that was fast, goes along with what you want. Housing, the varieties vary and your cabin depends on your tuition. But when you're in country, you can stay on the ship or you can stay in country and like pay for your own, or if you don't want to pay, you can go back and stay on the ship for free. Let's see.
I think we're frozen here for a minute.
Yeah, I can't, it's not, oh, there we go. So food is similar to housing. When you're on the ship, you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when you're in country, you're free to go out, eat what you want if you want to pay for food. If you don't want to pay for food, you can go back on the ship and eat meals for free, which are included. Or there's a snack bar, you can pay for food if you don't like what's being served. So field programs are extra things you can pay for if you want to have SAS put it together for you. Or you can do independent travel and travel on your own, and then figure out whatever you want to do. But field programs are put together. You don't have to stress about anything. Meals, lodging, everything is organized by semester at sea. And they're normally just really fun programs, like the Galapagos or a Sahara camel trek, depending on what your countries are. Along with the volunteer or with field programs, some of them have volunteer opportunities depending what your country is and like where all your stops are. They're just great ways to give back to your community. So I did a garbage cleanup on the beach, and I did another one where I went to a school in Ghana and got to play with little kids. They're just a great way to give back to the communities that you are visiting and a great way to experience them as well. So ship events, Semester at Sea hosts a lot of different things for seniors graduating: an alumni ball and dinner to celebrate the end of your voyage, Neptune Day when you're crossing the equator, drink and dance nights for fun like once a month, and then special guests for entertainment and for education, such as like guest speakers or famous musicians, authors, anyone you can learn from. Sea Olympics are another really fun event that I wanted to talk about separately. When you get on the ship, normally, depending on what your cabin is, you're separated into seas. And one day during the voyage, during a longer stretch, you compete, all the seas compete against each other in events of your choice. And you get the day off classes, fun events like tug of war, lip sync, spirit competition. It's just a great way to enjoy everyone. So the Netherlands was my first stop. And when it comes to making friends, normally there's a group chat or some sort of group that you can talk to people before, and sometimes people will try to meet up before getting on the ship. So I actually met up with a bunch of people the night before I got on the ship just to have some familiar faces when we did board the next day. As you can see, it's really pretty there. Mm-hmm. Our first stop was Poland. So a lot of people did field programs in these countries just because you don't really know who you're going to have for independent travel to travel with yet because it's so close. But I spent the first day with my roommates, which was really fun to explore with them. And then I did a field program, which was Poland north to south. And I got to see Auschwitz, World War II Museum, 4 different cities. I also made some of my best friends on the voyage in the first country because that's who you spend time with at the beginning. But you definitely can change up, obviously, who you travel with. And it's really fun to travel with different people and just figure out who you like traveling with the best. And next, we went to Portugal and Spain, which was kind of a weird port because it was 3 days in each, kind of a combined, versus 5 or 6 days in all of the other countries. And it was one of the only ones where you were allowed to travel to another country on your own. Normally, you have to stay within the country. Croatia and Montenegro are a good example of this. Montenegro was a field program where you were allowed to go with semester at sea to another country. Whereas, like I said before, normally you have to stay in the country you're docked in. So while we were in Croatia, normally we'd have to stay in Croatia, but we were provided with another opportunity. Morocco was a really cool port. We docked in Dubrovnik, and then I went on a Sahara camel trek. So we rode camels into the desert, and then we stayed in a nomad camp in the middle of the desert. Most of us stayed up till like 4. The stars were incredible. Got up, watched the sun rise, and then went back. Then I had Ghana and Trinidad and Tobago. So like I mentioned, there were a lot of volunteer opportunities in Ghana compared to other countries, but those were really cool experiences. Trinidad and Tobago, we were only there for 1 day. You had to be in a field program to get off the ship, but they made them very cheap. So that way all students could get off and experience the country. Then I had Brazil, which I did a lot. So I got to experience the Amazon on a riverboat and sleep in hammocks on a riverboat for a couple nights. And then I went to Rio, went to Copacabana, Christ the Redeemer, food tour in Rio. There's so much culture there with Carnival. And it was probably one of my top places. Highly recommend. Then we had Ecuador and the Galapagos. So some of the field programs offered in Ecuador were the Galapagos Islands and Machu Picchu. Those were probably the most popular two. Machu Picchu is another example of going to another country with the field program, which you're not normally allowed to do. But there was a lot of diversity in what you could do. So you could stay in Ecuador, you could go to the Galapagos, you could go to Peru. Semester at Sea just accommodates for a good variety to give people an opportunity to experience as many things as they can and as possible in the short time that you spend in each of these countries. But yeah, the views were incredible. Lots of amazing activities to do: snorkeling, kayaking, the giant tortoises, finches, blue-footed boobies, sea lions. And then our last country was Costa Rica. And kind of a bittersweet end. A lot of people did big groups for that. And then the views on the ship are amazing. You don't really have data, and there's really, really limited Wi-Fi. So you have to take in what you can. And then lifelong friends, because of the limited Wi-Fi and everything, you have to spend time with the people you're with on the ship, and you just enjoy their company. You're not on technology, you're not distracted by that. And you meet people from all over the states, all over the world. So it's really easy to visit and a great excuse to travel. So I went to California this summer to visit a few friends, and I'm actually doing a fantasy football league with another guy right now. So you just find ways to keep in touch with people, and you do make friends that stay in your life forever and become lifelong friends that you want to continue to visit. So yeah.
Thank you, Abby. That was fantastic, and I appreciate your patience there with a little bit of a technical snafu on our end. Those fabulous pictures take a little time to load, so great work there. Before we move on to Cedric, I would love if you could touch a little bit more on the whole Wi-Fi communication aspect of the ship.
Okay, so on the ship, there are a few websites that you can always access that are part of an intranet, which is different than internet. And you can always access those, but they're for like homework. And then there's a couple computers in the library where you can access almost anything. So when people are booking hotels, that's how they do it, is normally on those computers. But otherwise, each student is allotted about 7 minutes of Wi-Fi a day, and it goes pretty quick. And you can't do anything like really serious with it because it does use up really quick. Otherwise, you can purchase more, I believe. Most people choose not to, just because we play a lot of cards and board games and just hang out and talk. There's a pool on the ship, so you really just spend time with the people you're on the ship with, and you get used to not having technology. Yeah.
For that. I lost my own mute button there. I think that context is really helpful because I think the aspect of not having that type of instant communication like you're accustomed to can be a little intimidating or confusing for some. But here we're going to switch gears here. Let's get Cedric's presentation all set up. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's make sure it's the right one. All right. And so next up, as mentioned, we have Cedric Reese. Cedric is also a senior here at UND and majors in history and geography. Cedric's also from Grand Forks, which is always exciting for us, and studied abroad twice. The first time in Pau, France during fall 2018, and the second time in Krakow, Poland during spring 2020. So Cedric, if you could unmute yourself, you can take that away.
All right, yep. So I'm Cedric, as Emily explained. Right here on my right there on my title slide was a picture of Pau Castle, and here is the main square of Pau, France. Right now, you see. I don't think many people associate palm trees with France, but it's a very sunny, warm place. Actually, it's like 60 degrees in December, so it was a pretty wonderful place to go to when you've lived in North Dakota your whole life. And then we continue onwards. We had various small trips with the program. One of them was here to San Sebastian, Spain. Probably one of my favorite cities in the world to have visited. It was a really unique experience, and there are a bunch of other smaller cities we went to as well. Coming up here, you could do various things with the university. Here I am. I went hiking in the mountains several times. This is me on my first hike up in the Pyrenees. So you're technically both in France and Spain when you're up in the mountains. So there are a lot of various groups you could join, like soccer and other stuff you could do as extracurriculars while you're in France. And when I get to Poland, it was kind of a different situation there. But as I wait for my next slide, trying to remember what it was. not used to speaking so quickly. I apologize. But let's see. As for other activities. So we went to several rugby games. It was something I really recommend is definitely partaking in local events, whether it be live music or sports events or anything. It's definitely like it can be nerve wracking at first, like being around a bunch of people who don't speak your language, and it's really different. But I definitely recommend doing that. And then yeah, be adventurous along with that. Like try different foods. Like if you don't like it, even in America, I definitely recommend trying it in the country you stay at because it could taste completely different. When I went to Poland, I ate sauerkraut. I usually hate sauerkraut, but there I loved it. So there's a big thing is definitely just try stuff. And then here we see my class in France. A few of us were Americans, but several other people were from various countries like Ukraine, Russia, even Korea. And so this program, unlike in Poland, we were directly with the university. And so we were taking classes directly with the university. So that's why it was all those different international students. And here we have my room. I stayed with a host family. So I kind of got my own little room, and I knew French pretty well, so I spoke with my host father a lot, and we interacted a lot on a daily basis. Probably my biggest favorite part of being in France was just hanging out with him. And oh, it's slightly covered up here, but his picture's right here. His name was Bruno, and it was probably one of my favorite parts of the trip. It was very different from when I went to Poland because I just stayed in an apartment there, so definitely if you're nervous about staying with a family, I do recommend it because it definitely changes the whole experience compared to 2 years in the future when I stayed alone in an apartment. And then finally, right here, we had one of my favorite parts at the end was the Christmas festival. Definitely, if you go to Europe, that's a big part of their culture there is the Christmas festival. So I definitely recommend going out and exploring that if you get the chance because it's really amazing to see how they take Christmas. It's so different than here in America. And here now we have a picture of the main square in Krakow, Poland. So very different experience compared with France when I went to Krakow. There I arrived, so spring versus fall already was a big difference. And like even though it's European, the whole culture there and everything was still pretty different. One of my first trips, this was just something I did on my own initiative, which I didn't do as much in France because I was shyer the first time, but in Poland, I went to more places. This is Nowa Huta, which was like the ideal like socialist city built right next to Krakow. And so they had a big steelworks and everything. It was a bunch of like dark, oppressive buildings. And we went there on a rainy day. So it was really funny to see. And then here we have Krakow's University of Economics, which is where I went. It was very nice, actually, compared with the university in France. The university in France was a little rundown, but this one was like super fancy, like maybe not state of the art, but it definitely wasn't run down. That was a big part of it. And so, again, part of my time study abroad, I went to several different cities. First place I went to was Warsaw. I went to Warsaw twice, both times for a concert, actually, which was really cool to see concerts in Warsaw. They were American bands both times, but it was still really neat to see all that. Here we have my favorite city I've ever been to now is Prague in the Czech Republic. I definitely recommend no matter like where you are in Europe, try and go there because one of the days I was there, probably I got 30,000 steps in. I walked across the whole city just to see everything. It was one of my favorite memories ever. And part of that, this is a church in Prague, but just in general in Poland, in the Czech Republic, in Slovakia, they have beautiful churches. It's actually this art style I learned called Rococo, which is like very bright popping colors, as you can see here. And that's a big thing in Central Europe was that art style. And if you go to Europe, you definitely learn a lot about art while you take classes there. And here we have a church in Poland's oldest salt mine. They carved a church down there out of the salt in the walls for the miners. And now tourists go there and people get married and everything. It was insane seeing that. You could even lick the walls and it tastes like salt. And here's another place I went to, Bratislava in the Slovak Republic. Actually, my Airbnb was right next to their parliamentary building. So that was really cool to see. And there's even a restaurant where like all their politicians ate at that you could go see. So that was really cool. And just definitely contrast with how I was in France. Like in France, I stayed more in the general area, whereas when I was in Poland, I branched out more and I saw more stuff. And so here we have Poland's Krakow's like most famous church. It was actually under renovation the whole time I was there, except for the end when we got called back to come back to America. So my last day, I took a look at that. And then finally, we have a look here at my dorm room, which very different than staying with a host family. It was a little odd with like the whole living situation. Like the kitchen was all the way like down the hallway, so carrying all your stuff over was a bit of a pain. But I really did enjoy it. It was kind of cool seeing the difference between living with a host family and then living in an apartment.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Cedric. I appreciate you sharing your story. We're going to switch gears a little bit here and do the Q&A. So again, if anybody has any particular or specific questions you're interested in asking, now is a great time to put them in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and start with a few. As far as structure, we'll keep ourselves on mute, myself included, as we ask that, as people are answering questions. But if you both feel comfortable answering both of them, just kind of give a notice to the other one so we don't talk over each other. But the first question I have is, why did you choose your location or program in particular, since you both will have different aspects there?
I can go first. Sorry. So I had a really hard time deciding where to go, and I thought about New Zealand and Australia, but their semesters are a little different, and there were just so many places I wanted to see that semester at sea gave me a little bit of that. You get 5 or 6 days about in each country, so you get to see a lot of different locations, and it's a completely different format than being in one place for an entire semester.
All right. So as for me, reason I went to France in the first place, I have relatives who live in France, and I actually have French citizenship and heritage. So I went there to improve my language skills, and even though my family lived on the other side of France, I still I stayed with them before the program started. I stayed with them afterwards, and also they came and visited me during our big break in the middle. So that was more like my own like improving my own like cultural heritage, was like trying to learn the language more and just like living there and being with my family and everything. And then I heard about a lot of people when they do study abroad, they sometimes do a year. I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do a whole year in France. So when I came back, I thought it over. I wanted to try a year in another country, or not a semester in another country. At first, I wanted to go to like Australia or New Zealand, kind of like Abby, someplace warm, and I didn't have to learn a new language and everything like that. But well, their semester started funny, so I couldn't do that. And then I was looking in Europe because I have an EU passport, so it makes it easier for me to stay there. I didn't have to worry about a visa and everything like that, which was really nice. And I settled between either Czech Republic or Poland, and I decided to eventually go with Poland. So I spent, well, half a semester there, but it was definitely a wonderful experience going there too.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next one, and I know Abby, most of these questions are going to be a little funky based on your structure of your program, so answer as you will. And same with you, Cedric, if you want to touch on both experiences or highlight one, go for it. But the next one is, if you find it easy to get around your host city or just in general.
I'll go first this time. Yeah, at least I don't know about other places, but Europe, it's super easy to get around like anywhere. It's super connected, and it's not like North Dakota where you have to. Well, everything's like even kind of far away in Grand Forks. Like there's grocery stores nearby. Actually, for most of my time in Poe, I didn't even really use public transportation. I was able to walk everywhere. I could walk to the train station, to the university, or like to downtown. It'd take like at the most like 25 minutes, but I was never in that big of a hurry, so just being able to walk everywhere was super nice. It's also really good for your health too, and since the weather was so warm, it was like, why not walk? So saved a little bit of money, and got a little exercise and all that, so that was wonderful. And then in Poland, where well, things were our apartments were like kind of on the edge of town, so it made things a little harder, and it was a little colder there too, but they had a really nice bus system set up. And also because we were students, we got discounts on the buses and they ran pretty frequently. So at first, for everyone, like all of us Americans, like used to like taking our cars, all the time and everything. It was a little difficult to get used to taking buses, and sometimes we'd mess up the schedules, or like, in Poland, they don't communicate like how stuff works super well. And sometimes buses would show up 10 minutes late. So you'd always have to make sure to like leave early, or if not, like if you left on time, you would be late because that's just how the buses were. And it was always annoying too, because you'd expect them to be late or whatever. You'd show up late. To just show up early, just often enough, you couldn't do that. As for like more like bigger picture getting around, like there were trains, pretty cheap, honestly, to like get any place. They're longer than I thought. Like even a train from Krakow to Warsaw was like 4 or 5 hours. So that's if you're like not in a super big hurry, or if not, there's also, I didn't get a chance to use this because right when I started booking flights instead of using trains to go places, I came back to the United States. But there's like Ryanair and a few other like various airlines you can use to go to different countries for pretty cheap. Like I got a $20 ticket to go to Oslo, Norway. So honestly, the train ticket to go from the Oslo airport to Oslo was about the same price as the airplane ticket I looked up. So that was hilarious. And then, oh yeah, for going to Prague, they're also like pretty good, like kind of like charter buses you can take to go around places too. Like not just within cities, you can take buses, but to other cities. And so going to Prague, I actually took a combination of a train and a bus, and that was actually a really nice experience too.
Okay. Yeah, so my experience with transportation is a little different just because the ship is your main form of transportation, and some of the ports were really far out of the city, like in Poland, in Gdańsk, it's kind of on the outskirts. In Morocco, it was also kind of on the outskirts. Portugal, it was like right there near the city center. But a lot of the time, Semester at Sea would have taxis and everything waiting for you out there. Obviously, you had to pay, but you could just take the taxi wherever you wanted to go. A lot of the European countries had Uber, so very, very similar to getting around in the States. A lot of people took trains and buses when traveling longer distances within countries. So like when I was in Poland, people took buses and trains from Gdańsk to Warsaw or Krakow. When going from Portugal to Spain, I took an overnight bus, but some people flew. Same with Ecuador, going from Ecuador to the Galapagos, people flew. Otherwise, a lot of times Ubers, taxis, buses, trains. Pretty easy to find tickets, especially in Europe. The transportation system is really well set up, so you can normally find something you want to go and it's not that expensive. There were a couple countries where it was a little harder to get around, such as Ghana, but you could normally find taxis, or if you were doing something with Semester at Sea, they have transportation set up for you and you don't have to worry about it.
All right, so next is about food and feeding yourself. So how did that work for you? Food provided, or did you cook more for yourself? Did you eat out more? Were your grocery store experiences different? Love to kind of hear the general thoughts on food.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, food on the ship is provided in your tuition. So you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then there's a snack bar that if you don't like what's being served, you can buy your standard pizza, cheeseburger, fries, those kind of things. And you get in really tight with like the workers at the snack bar and at the dining center. It is kind of like I don't want to say restaurant, but it's a buffet style where you can go back as many times as you want. And then they have workers that walk around and they'll like clear your plates for you. But like a lot of the time by the end of the voyage, people would bring up their plates and have a conversation with the workers. And then in country, like I mentioned, you could either go find your own places, look them up, wander, and then pay for your own food. Or if you didn't want to do that, you could go back on the ship and eat. The times were limited, but again, you don't have to pay for it. But I would definitely recommend trying at least some local food, because like Cedric mentioned, like you might not like something somewhere else, but the chances are it's might be really different or different ingredients. In Europe, their standards of like quality of products is totally different. So like not as many preservatives. So it normally makes for like really good food. I don't think I ever had a bad meal. And then grocery stores, or cooking, we didn't really do too much of that, because unless you got an Airbnb with a kitchen, it's kind of difficult. But I know in some places like plastic bags weren't as common, so you'd kind of have to carry your own groceries, or have another bag, which we weren't really prepared for.
All right. So as for me, it was actually pretty different in France and Poland. Staying with a host family, well, like when you pay for like your lodgings and everything, like it said like a set number of meals was like included with that, and so it was usually like a few times a week or whatever. But I would eat every evening with my host father, and we'd talk and everything. Like he wanted to learn some English, and I was trying to improve my French, so we'd do that. And from what I heard, like there are other hosts, like students who stay with host families, they just go upstairs and eat their dinner in their room and just kind of away. So I know some host families, like if you wanted to have extra meals with them or whatever, you'd have to pay for it. But my host father, he didn't charge me anything extra for the food because I think he just liked the company. And it wasn't, like he wasn't like doing extravagant meals or anything. Like sometimes we just literally ate soup that night as like a soup and bread or whatever. Like not, it wasn't, fantastic. It was just nice, not to have to worry about that. And I'd, help out with the dishes and everything, just as like a thank you and everything. So that was really nice. And then usually for lunch and breakfast, like for breakfast, I just go buy my own jam or whatever. And I'd use some of this bread, and it was like no big deal. For lunch, I'd usually, be on my own. Since it was France, you can get a baguette for like €1. So, and you can get really good lunch meat. Like their ham there, fantastic, and it's usually pretty cheap too. So I either make sandwiches or like other stuff like that, or if not, there's a kebab place right next to the university, and they gave discounts to university students. I ate there probably like once a week because it was really really good. But since it was France, like I did, like some evenings I would just, like go out and try restaurants, or like when I travel a little bit or whatever, like I just, I'd see a place that looked interesting, I'd try it, and then I'd try and like, try and translate the menu, because, always ask for like the local menu, because like sometimes it's different. Like there's a touristy menu and then there's like the local menu. Like get the local menu, it's better. It might not be in your language, and you might have to work with it a little bit. It might be a little difficult, but it's definitely worth it. And in Poland, it was different, living on my own. So I'm not the greatest. I don't really know how to cook very well. So before I left, I asked my dad to teach me how to cook a few things. And so like potatoes and sausages and like stuff like that, like how to make like rice and curry and like, like a good pasta or whatever. So I was able to do that. I like to think I cooked pretty well for myself. I burnt only a couple of things. It was a learning experience for sure, but I definitely got better. Compare that with like a few other people who I know someone like they got really lazy and they put like just Nutella on bread and ate that for like dinner like half the nights. Is like, so if you're gonna travel and you're gonna stay on your own, definitely pick up a few cooking skills. It's definitely worth it. Like, just trying to work with local ingredients, like potatoes in Poland taste really different than here. So like working with dough, like I cook potatoes a lot on my own, so that was interesting. But then also like, well, food in Poland was super cheap. Like even at restaurants, because of the way their currency worked, you spend like 20 zloty, which is their currency, on a meal there. That's like 5 American. So it was tempting to eat out all the time, but I was like, no, I'm still gonna like, stay at home and cook my own stuff most evening. So again, for like lunch, I'd usually like go someplace, whether at the school cafeteria or oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention for France. Actually, a big thing was eating with the university. You could pay for like, it was a pretty cheap meal plan. Just eat there, and there'd be a decent variety and stuff, and that was pretty good. In Poland, their university didn't have it. They had university restaurants, but you couldn't really do a plan or whatever. So I ate there sometimes, but the university was right in the middle of downtown, so you could just walk to any place and you could eat there. And so also when I like traveled to all the little cities or whatever, like since I stayed in Airbnb, that's definitely like when I spent a little more on food. I'm usually a really cheap person, But the one time I let myself like spend money was food, because it's definitely worth it. Like no point in getting like, a cheap meal when you go to a restaurant, because you're probably never gonna eat there again. So definitely, if something catches your eye, like, try it. It looks interesting. Once I had chicken liver in a Polish city called Poznan, and I told myself just a year before I never would have tried that. But it was like it was a local specialty. It was like, why not? And it wasn't terrible, it wasn't brilliant, but I'm glad I tried it because it's definitely interesting. So yeah, if you go out to eat, just be adventurous. Don't get like chicken nuggets or a burger or whatever. Don't go to McDonald's. Like there's some people who would like go to McDonald's like every couple of days. It's like, you can go to McDonald's in America. Don't go to McDonald's. But yeah, you can go there and try it once, because they have some crazy, like in Poland, they had like a fried cheese like hamburger at McDonald's. Like they literally like it's hard to describe. They called it the lumberjack or whatever. Definitely don't have that in America. But I definitely recommend like just kind of stay away from fast food and all that stuff. Because again, you can just get that stuff in America.
I like this inspirational food talk. It's also making me hungry. So we're going to switch gears. I want to ask about packing. So how did you feel you did? Did you pack too much? Did you not pack enough? Do you have regrets or tips? Let's hear those.
Yeah, it's really hard for me. Packing anywhere, even a small vacation, I always feel like I'm forgetting something. Like did I pack enough? Like I look at my bag, is like, is that really all I need? I feel like I need more. Is this mentality you have? I think, well, going to France, I guess I'd slightly overpacked, because I actually originally had planned to stay in an apartment and not with a host family. And then the last minute they told me, nope, we're all out of apartments. You're with a host family. And I was like, okay. So like all this stuff I had needed, I brought like shower shoes or whatever I didn't really require. So, because thankfully enough, like he let me, like use some stuff at his place, which made it way easier. And then in Poland for packing, I think I got basically everything I needed. Like stuff was cheap there too. Like some of the bigger like clothes definitely. Actually, sorry. In general, I'd say it'd probably be better to just underpack. Like if you forget something, you can just buy it there. Most likely, it's probably cheaper than what it would be in America. I guess it depends on the country a lot. But if you like didn't bring enough clothes, you more likely than not, like you're gonna buy clothes there anyway. So like just bring just enough to last you like your first week or so, and then afterwards, like that's when you start buying stuff, because you don't want to bring a bunch of stuff and then have to worry about bringing it back. And also, just the less like heavy suitcases you have to carry around everywhere, the better. So like definitely overpacking is probably what you want to avoid more than underpacking, I'd say.
So I severely underpacked. I had like 2 bags, and then I started like panicking and second guessing, and my parents came over with me because we went to Ireland before. So I sent my second bag home with my parents, and I immediately regretted it. Packing for semester at sea is a little different though, because you're not in one location the whole time. So you're packed, like for me, I was packing for 11 different countries with 11 different climates. I was lucky because the way my voyage went, it never was below 60 degrees, because we started in Europe, in Poland, where it would have gotten colder. And then we went down and across the Atlantic Ocean. And then we finished in San Diego again, where it was like 60 degrees, because we finished December 23rd. So I packed it was pretty warm. Like Cedric said, you can definitely buy things in country. If you do forget things, it's pretty easy to find what you want. And you might want to leave a few things at home just so you can buy them, and then you have them from another country. Like I went on a major shopping spree in Costa Rica and brought back a bunch of things. Another thing that Semester at Sea recommends is that you bring an extra, like at least duffel bag that you don't pack anything in on the way there, because you're gonna pick up gifts and everything, most likely, or like you're gonna gain clothes. Like you're not gonna leave your study abroad with less things. You're probably going to leave with more. So having an extra bag that you can pack in, or buying an extra bag that you can also take. Plus, if you have a few more bags, normally it's cheaper than if you cram a ton of things into one bag and you have to pay for like a heavy bag, like an overweight bag. That's almost more expensive than paying for like 2 small bags. I had that issue getting home. I had to pay like, I think it was $175 to get one of my bags home because it was so overweight, versus if I would have had 2 just checked bags, it would have only been like $100. So bags are important.
That is a good tip. Lessons learned. So aside from different souvenirs or gifts or things you may have brought back, did you come back with any new like music or movies or show recommendations? Were you able to connect with any aspect of where you were in those ways? I know that can be a tough question depending on if you had access to a TV, but I know that music can be a really big trigger to bring people back to where they were in a moment. So I'm curious if that was any part of your experience.
Music in Poland. I didn't actually hear a whole lot of Polish music. They like the. I just on the radio like once when I took the taxi from the airport and a few other times, but they did play a lot of American music there. And again, when I went to Warsaw, I went to the concerts. That was American music. But as for cultural, just like I always look for books in other countries, so I brought back a couple of books. I did get like one in Polish just for fun, even though I can't read it. It was like it's just a cool thing to have. France, since it's like my family and like kind of stuff I grew up with, I actually, even though I didn't know like French music a ton, I actually in my classes we had like this whole culture segment. And a good part of it we listened to music as like my mother listens to a very specific type of French music. So this type that I was finally exposed to is like completely different than what I knew. I really liked it. So I listen to a lot of that stuff now. And whenever I think about it, I think about my class and everyone else. Because we talk about the song afterward in class, like what we thought about it. And so I always think about my class when I hear that type of music now. And in France, they love their comic books. It's a really big thing. So I brought back a lot of comic books. It was a little hard because like they're hardcover and they're a bit wide, but I managed to squeeze them into my case. So yeah, that was a big part of what I brought back.
That's tricky. I wouldn't say I necessarily brought back a lot of anything, but it is very interesting to hear the local music in each country. So, you know, when I was in Poland, we went to a restaurant where they had like a local musician band playing, and he was like using the accordion, and that was just a really fun memory. In Spain, I went to a flamenco show, so I got exposed to that part of the culture. In Ghana, I went to like a drum circle. That was really cool. You also learn how many countries listen to American music, or some sort of version of it. If it's their own, you'll hear a song and you'll be like, I know this song, but it's in a different language. That happened in Copacabana. In Brazil, we went to this one place and they knew we were American, so they kept asking us for song recommendations so we could all sing along. But then you'd hear a song and you'd be like, I know this song, but it's in Spanish. And you'd be like, okay, like interesting. And I actually have a couple of those covers on my phone now because I just found them really interesting. And then as far as movies and other things, on the ship, we had this really good singing and piano duet that came on and entertained us, played for us. So you get to hear things on the ship. And then I don't know if anyone has heard of The Black Klansman, but it is a book that has also become a movie. And we had the author of the book come on the ship and talk about it. We did a screening of the movie, and then he did a Q&A after and like did signed books and everything. So that was just a really fascinating experience. And Semester at Sea normally tries to bring on different people like that so you can learn and enjoy that.
Yeah, those are really unique for both of you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, just a couple more. We're already getting closer to the end of our hour here. So practically, what did you do regarding your cell phone? What was your cell phone strategy while abroad?
Oh, this is really important. I recommend it to a lot of people. Actually, my friend who had studied abroad in Norway, and I believe 2016 with UND, he recommended this to me. It's a program called Google Fi, actually, and you can even. I used to be you have to use specific phones with it when I first started in 2018, but now any phone like you can use it. It basically it works in basically any country on Earth, and it's unlimited messaging. Yeah, that's really useful. Unlimited messaging, really useful. Um, calls on Wi-Fi are free, and then calls off Wi-Fi. It varies by country, but it's like usually like some cents per minute or whatever. And then for data, it has pretty reliable data. At least the various places in Europe I went to, like even up in the mountains, I had a bit. Um, about I believe so you charge like by the gig. So your first 6 gig, like each gig is $10, and that's only what you use. So if you use half a gig, you only charge $5. And then if you use above 6 gigabytes of data, the rest is free. Like everything after 6 is free, which is I never use that much. Like I hardly get to one, but it was definitely really useful to have data and not be worrying about your phone and everything. Because usually when you first arrive, you will not have Wi-Fi. Like I know people who went to dorms in France, their dorms did not have Wi-Fi and they had to do their own thing. And then in Poland, we did have Wi-Fi, but it just didn't work. And it probably won't work in a lot of places. Like the university in France was spotty, their Wi-Fi was spotty and everything. So, but that definitely when you first get there, just having that data, like if something goes wrong and you can look something up, or like you can call someone or like message them, and you can do that. You have that communication. It's good. Like later on in the semester when you're more set up, like it's not as big a deal. But like usually, when you first arrive is the most stressful part, and something probably will go wrong. So just having that like fallback is really useful. I know there are plenty of other plans and stuff people use, but I definitely recommend Google Fi because it's really easy and like pain free. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. I had a lot of people on my voyage that use Google Fi and they really liked it. Semester at sea is a little different because you go like 6 days without any sort of needing any sort of data, so you can just turn it on, and you kind of go back and forth. So I used Verizon Travel Pass, which is $10 a day for 0.5 gigabytes, and then it's like $5 for every additional, and then like unlimited calls and texts, which worked out really well because when you're only in country for half the days you're at sea, so it kind of makes sense. Plus, if you're with a group, you can be like, okay, I'm gonna turn on my data for the first and third day in this country, and then you can turn it on for the second and fifth, and we'll just use your phone. Again, it can be hard to find Wi-Fi in certain places. Another thing a lot of people did was they bought SIM cards in each country, and they just, as soon as we got to a country, they'd go to a local corner store and just buy a simple SIM card. And normally in Europe, they were able to buy one that worked for all of Europe. And then in other countries, they were a little harder to find, like Ghana. But there's a lot of different options. Semester at sea is a little more difficult because you want to be able to turn it on and off. You don't need it all the time. But like was mentioned before, it is really helpful to have some sort of data in case something goes wrong and you need to use your phone, you need to figure out where you are, you need to look something up or how to say something. So definitely having at least a little data to help you get around is useful.
All right, thank you. So last question here. What would you say to someone who is on the fence about applying to go abroad?
Okay, this is a big one, I think. If you go abroad, just because you go abroad doesn't mean you have to spend like a ton of money. Because I know sometimes they make it seem like you gotta just spend when you travel, but you don't have to. Seriously, honestly, I had a great time. A lot of times I wouldn't like, there's all those like tourist attractions like, oh, come in, look at this, yeah. Just walking around and looking at stuff can be great, and that's like perfectly free. Also, you get student discounts, especially in Europe. It's a big thing. Like usually pretty quickly you get a student ID card, just like here at UND, when you're in Europe. So definitely like ask and like look around, and if you show it, you get a pretty good discount on stuff. That's a big thing. There are a lot of free museums in Europe. That was another thing. Like yeah, there's some nice paid museums too to go to. Like I went to, or even sometimes they're unpaid and you can like do a donation. Like I went to the Jewish History Museum in Warsaw, and that was actually, I believe it cost me a Polish penny to go because I was a student, but I left a little donation anyway because it was a really nice museum. But yeah, that's a big thing. Like you know, just because you travel to another country doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money. That's important to remember. Like you go to like you know, I know this is like the peer pressure. Like you go with a group of people, like, you know, people want to go shopping and you see other people buying all this stuff, or like, or you go to a knickknack shop and you see all these cool knickknacks. It's like, oh, maybe I should get something or whatever. Like, just remember, just because you can spend money doesn't mean you should. Like for me, I had a plan. I collect souvenir spoons. I've just done it since I was little. So that was the one knickknack I'd allow myself. Or I also get some postcards from my mother and everything else. I get myself a souvenir spoon wherever I went, and that would be my one expense. It was like, that was nice. So yeah, just remember, you don't have to spend a ton of money to study abroad.
Yeah. Okay, well, if someone's on the fence, do it. You're not going to regret it. It's a life-changing experience, and it's something that you'll carry with you forever. It also looks amazing on a resume. But you can learn a lot more than just your classes you take, learning about different cultures. And if you do go abroad, like Cedric said, like you don't have, like, it can be fun to do the touristy things, but talk to locals, meet locals, because they're gonna know what's really cool to do, and they're gonna know the best places to eat that aren't gonna be crazy expensive. They'll give you the best experiences, and it also saves money. Just going to the local places and like sitting down talking with them, you'll learn more than you could ever learn from Google or anywhere else. But yeah, just wandering will show you things that you never thought you could see.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing your stories, your experiences abroad, and also answering all these questions so genuinely and fully. I appreciate you taking the time here, and we're going to wrap up now. So thank you very much.